We're just going to bring you these live and exclusive pictures here from inside the presidential palace. What you are looking at right now is Taliban fighters inside the presidential palace. This is these pictures exclusive on Al Jazeera. We've been watching them for a few moments now, milling around the lush environs of the presidential palace. We're not sure if they're making an announcement yet, but the camera has been trailing those fighters as they make their way through the halls of the Afghan presidential palace, wandering up through the building, decked out in its finery. Of course, this after the Afghan president fled the capital.
We're still trying to verify how these people have died. There was chaos in the last about 24 hours of people trying to get on planes, trying to get out. They essentially overwhelmed the airport security. Thousands of people flooding onto the tarmac, clamoring to try to get onto planes. There are stories of people just pushing past and sitting on a plane and waiting for a pilot to show up to fly them out. We understand the airport is under the security of international forces. So there are some questions about whether international forces were involved in the deaths of these civilians as they were trying to leave, or whether or not they were simply crushed in the stampede. Now, because of this, all flights have been cancelled, all civilian flights have been cancelled at least. The international forces have taken over the air traffic control, and they are just it's only military flights coming in and out, essentially evacuating international personnel, evacuating Americans, and then also evacuating people who have worked, Afghans who have worked with embassies and are associated with international groups, and people who may have worked as interpreters, that type of thing.
Amid Taliban resurgence in Afghanistan, a political slugfest has emerged in the United States. The former president of US, Donald Trump, has yet again lambasted Joe Biden for being responsible for the current situation in the war-torn country. Trump has called for Biden's resignation. He has said, and I quote, "It is time for Joe Biden to resign in disgrace for what he has allowed to happen to Afghanistan." He has called Biden's move legendary and has said that the decision will go down in history as America's greatest defeat. Remember, in 2020, during Trump's presidency, the United States brokered a deal with the Taliban in Doha regarding the US withdrawal of all its troops by May 2021. This was in exchange for various security guarantees from the militants. Biden, on the other hand, pushed back the deadline for the withdrawal and set no conditions for the same. Trump has repeatedly blasted Biden over the move and says that the earlier plan would have been successful.
Southwest Haiti has suffered the worst damage from the 7.2 magnitude earthquake, which hit the Caribbean country on Saturday. The tremor was felt in the capital Port-au-Prince, 125 kilometers from the epicenter. Overwhelmed hospitals are struggling to treat the thousands injured, while rescue operations have been made difficult as the only route to the worst-hit areas is controlled by armed gangs. The earthquake hit a country still reeling from political crisis after the assassination of its president last month, and one that is still recovering from a devastating earthquake which killed more than 200,000 people in 2010. Haiti is now bracing itself for Tropical Depression Grace, which could cause mudslides and flooding.
We're looking at this situation literally catching the country out of the blue here, coming into the skies over State Road. We're seeing on the screen, Daniel, the images of that lone interception there above the city. What is thought to be behind this? Earlier we were discussing, obviously, the major incident in Jenin overnight in the West Bank. Is there thought to be a connection?
Right, David. You know, earlier this morning, really, we already heard from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, who often chimes in after these sort of extreme incidents where Palestinians are killed by Israeli security forces, especially if it's terror-related, promising revenge, promising that their death will not go in vain. And indeed, here we see one maybe symbolic. Generally, it is symbolic in some way or another rocket launch from the Gaza Strip.
They say money talks, and detectives are hoping new $1 million rewards will break a 40-year silence surrounding the disappearance of 2 teenagers near Newcastle. The girls vanished within weeks of each other in 1979, with fears they fell victim to a serial killer.
Robyn Hickie and Amanda Robinson were strangers during their short lives, but for 4 decades their deaths linked. The teenagers feared murdered by a serial killer. Robyn was an 18-year-old dental nurse, Amanda 14 and still at school. Robyn left her home on April 7, 1979. She was last seen at a bus stop on the Pacific Highway at Belmont North, heading out to meet a friend. Exactly 2 weeks later, Amanda vanished after catching a bus home to Swansea after a school dance.
There were words that Zambian opposition leader Hichilema has waited years to hear.
I therefore declare the said Hichilema Hakainde S to be President-elect of the Republic of Zambia.
His defeat of incumbent President Edgar Lungu came on Hakainde's 6th try for the top office, and his supporters are ecstatic. Their candidate won an outright majority, more than 50% of the vote, which means there will be no runoff. But now the daunting task of turning around the economy begins.